The world doesn't go quiet just because you're trying to think. It shouts at you nonstop, telling you who to be, what to wear, what success looks like, who's winning, and why you're not. And you, maybe without realizing it, start listening. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. Because fitting in feels safe. Because being accepted feels like survival. But the truth is, you weren't created to follow the noise. You were created to hear the still, small voice that's been buried under it. We live in a world where it's normal to be shaped by the opinions of people who barely know us. We take direction from people who haven't walked a single step in our shoes. We give away our peace in exchange for their approval. And the price, ourselves. Every time you edit who you are just to keep someone else comfortable, you leave a piece of yourself behind. Until eventually, you're just a carefully curated version of you. Smiling on cue, succeeding by their standards, living a life that looks right but doesn't feel right. Here's the question: what would your life look like if no one was watching? If there were no expectations, no social media feeds, no imaginary audience in your head? Who would you become? That version of you, the real you, still exists, still wants to breathe, still wants to speak, but it's been buried under years of noise, fear, comparison, and distraction. People will always have opinions. That's not the problem. The problem is believing them. The problem is letting their opinions become your truth. You're not too much. You're not behind. You're not a failure. You're just listening to the wrong voices. There's something sacred about reaching the point where you no longer care to perform, where your energy is no longer spent on explaining yourself, or proving your worth, or justifying your path, not out of pride, but out of peace. That's quiet power, not loud, not reactive, just real, just grounded. You start showing up, not to be seen, but because you belong. You start making choices, not to impress, but to align. And yeah, people will notice the shift. Some will support you, others will resist, but let them. Because the moment you stop needing validation is the moment you reclaim your life. You realize it's not about being liked, it's about being whole. It's not about fitting in, it's about standing firm. There's a reason why so many people feel lost. It's not because they don't have dreams, it's because they've been pulled in so many directions by other people's voices that they forgot what their own voice even sounds like. We scroll endlessly, we consume constantly. But how often do we pause long enough to ask, who am I when the world goes quiet? What do I believe? What actually matters to me? If you can't answer those questions right now, you're not broken. You're just overdue for silence, overdue for solitude, overdue for yourself. This is why the great thinkers, the philosophers, the sages, the warriors, they all valued stillness. They all understood the importance of getting alone, of sitting in the dark with your own thoughts, of becoming familiar with your soul. True clarity doesn't come from noise. It comes from quiet. But you have to choose it. Turn off the phone. Log out. Let people think whatever they want to think. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't have to respond to every critic. You don't have to carry the weight of their expectations. That's their baggage, not yours. The more you practice detachment from opinion, the more you start to feel something else grow. Respect. Self-respect. Not the fake kind that comes from likes and applause, the kind that's built when you do the hard things in silence, when you show up for yourself day after day, even when no one sees it, when you live by a standard higher than the world's. And here's the thing, as you begin to heal, as you begin to rise, people from your past might try to remind you of who you used to be. Let them talk. You're not there anymore. Don't climb back into the pit just to prove a point. Let your growth speak for itself. You don't owe explanations. You don't need to convince them. You're not who you were, and that's the point. One day you'll look back and thank yourself for being brave enough to stop living for everyone else, for walking away from what was comfortable into the wild unknown of who you really are. That's where life begins. Not when you get louder, but when you get clearer. Not when you please everyone, but when you finally tell the truth. Not when you arrive, but when you become. So breathe, let go of who they think you are, and step into who you were created to be. Because the real power, it's not loud, it's not desperate, it's not for show. It's quiet, it's deep, and it's yours. This is your quiet power.